Which Florida State transfer portal additions earned starting roles during spring practice?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. In today's show, we are going to break down the most likely candidates from the transfer portal to make an impact and start for the Noles once spring practice is concluded. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers, join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com, locked on to get started. All right, this is pretty straightforward. This past week, I discussed some concerns about positions, depth, etc., but the possibilities as well. Florida State has a lot of kids coming back that for one reason or another, they didn't get a maximum number of reps. You know, Keon and Johnny at receiver, that's an example. Some of the kids, Williamson, etc., didn't get as many reps with those guys in front of them. That's fair. But there are also the transfer portal additions. Minus DJ Uyunglele, who I did feature because he's the quarterback more than likely this next year, I left the transfer portal players out. So again, if you take nothing else away from this, note, this is all about the transfers that are coming in. I'm going to focus on 6 of them, and I would love for everybody to comment on YouTube, hey, this is what I think about Roydell Williams. This is why I do or do not like Sean Murphy, etc. I'm going to touch on all of them, but I want you to make your own opinions heard, and, you know, maybe I bring up something else and we go off of that for another show, maybe a live show, etc. Whatever the case may be, here's the key. It's about you. What do you want to hear? Let me know. So to get started, I'm going to talk about a player on offense that I'm really curious about. I just mentioned Johnny and I just mentioned Keon, the 2 stud receivers headed off to the National Football League from Florida State. How do you replace that? Can you? That's debatable at best. Those are 2 big-time athletes. One's listed at 6'4". He's probably at least 6'3". Johnny was listed at 6'7". He's at least 6'6". And they could both really run. That's as rare a 1-2 punch in terms of just physical stature as college football was seen arguably in my lifetime. You're not going to just walk out there and go boom and boom. Here are 2 good recruits. We're good to go. It's going to take a team effort. With that, there's a key player coming in from Alabama in Malik Benson. Now, I have good news and bad news. Why I think he could start and why he may not. Take it for what it's worth. I'm a little skeptical. Here's why I say that. If you do your research, there are some things that make you go, This is a young man that did not have a catch against LSU, Michigan, or Georgia last year for the Tide. I don't know the injury situation right off the bat before anybody asks. But those are 3 prime games for them, including the last 2. That gives me pause. Having said that, he was a big-time recruit. He's a kid that can really run, not just fast, like he is fast. And he can go by guys, and he can hit the home run. He had 13 catches for 162 yards and a score last year. Bama was not Bama last year at receiver either. Isaiah Bond was their best receiver. He's the kid that transferred to Texas, but they don't have a dude. And he didn't consistently make a mark. Part of that, I know their quarterback room at Alabama was really weird. Not taking that away from the equation, but it concerns me. On the other side, Florida State has a recent history of guys like this, doesn't matter position, but in this case receiver, where things may not have gone perfectly. And then somebody on the staff, again, it doesn't matter the position, Norvell and everybody get them together, they figure out a plan for this young man, and it works out. Should we buy into Malik Benson being a starter, or at least, let's throw this caveat out there, a guy that rotates in as kind of a co-starter, is your deep threat screen guy, take the top off the defense type of player? If he only does that, let's say he gets 18 catches and 9 of them are first downs or touchdowns, right off the bat, that's pretty good. But if he could be a 40-catch guy, it would change Florida State's season. I have no idea what to expect out of this kid. Nick Saban is incredibly picky, maybe the pickiest coach ever about certain things you do throughout the week, off season, etc., to get reps. He does not care what your recruiting ranking is once you get there because all the kids he had were highly ranked. It's just true. That being the case, again, a kid with elite speed and talent didn't consistently perform for them. Should myself or Florida State fans in general think this young man's going to be a starter for the Noles in 2024? I'm going to let you guys talk about that and make a comment on it. I'm in flux on it. I don't have an opinion yet. I need, and I know this is cheating, but unless somebody at Florida State tells me he's the guy, I'm not going to believe it. I'm a glass half empty dude, period. That you're not going to change my opinion on. You got to show me. My eyes must see it on the field. But since this is a projection right now, it's really hard to say. Maybe he hits it off with DJ. Maybe he doesn't. But that's the first player I want to talk about. Second up, this is somebody I like. And I think and another kid from Alabama, and I think he got a little bit of a raw deal. And it wasn't like anybody's fault, his included. It's just, again, they had a lot of players. He was at Alabama. Roydell Williams. He's from Hueytown, Alabama, just south of Birmingham. Highly rated kid out of high school. Contributed throughout his career. Had over 500 yards rushing last year. Averaged 5.1 yards per tote. And scored 5 touchdowns. But here's the key. He was a key player, unlike Malik, in some of the bigger games. In particular, the Georgia game. It's not just about rushing numbers. Play action game, pass protection, catching the ball. He is an all-around 3-down running back with experience. He's a kid that was a senior. You know what I mean? Like, this matters. If you've been through the SEC rigors, then you transfer to any school. I don't care if it's Syracuse or Texas, El Paso. You're taking a lot of experience there. He's coming down to Tallahassee. I think he can be an every down back. Maybe he's the starter. Maybe he's not. I don't care. But running back's a different deal anyway. You're going to rotate guys pretty much anywhere you go in college football at the running back position. There are very, very, very few exceptions because you want guys healthy at the end of the year. And, of course, running backs get beat up. Toafili is my favorite running back at Florida State. He's probably the odds-on favorite to start. He's good in the screen game. He fits Norvell's offense. But this is a tremendous compliment. And 1A, 1B, and again, care less who starts. I like this young man as a dude who is worthy of the starter label. That's my opinion. I'm not saying he is the next Bo Jackson. I am not saying he is the next Dexter Jackson, played at Florida State, whatever. I'm just saying he can be a very good and effective football player for the Noles. It's proven, and again, against Southeastern Conference competition. It's not just here and there. I mean, they were playing Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Ole Miss, etc. They played against tremendous teams, and he was always a part of their game plan. I'll take Roydell any day of the week, twice on Sunday. If you don't think that he's that guy, that's on you, because I'm telling you right now, he's going to make a lot of things happen for them. With that being said, Florida State probably needs another running back to develop as well. Keziah Holmes, etc. Maybe my guy Davis, the freshman, comes in and plays. They'll figure that out. But having two guys with experience in Toafili and Roydell, like, that's about as good as you could be in a situation when you lose Trey Benson to the NFL. To have those two alone, Florida State fans should be pretty happy. It's not an easy way to go. So we'll get into more on that here in just a minute on the other side. Right now, let's talk a little bit about FanDuel. FanDuel, you can check out everything you need and get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. All you got to do is bet on your favorite NBA players and our teams, like with quick bets, live, same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. I'm a guy that likes the numbers with the quarters and stuff like that. When I look at stuff, I'm always curious about that personally. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook of the NBA. Now, the next two up. This is something that's interesting. I did two skill guys on offense first. So I'm going to do a lineman on both sides of the ball here for this little section of the show. We're going to start with Richie Leonard. Played for the Gators. He's from Cocoa, Florida. He's a local kid from the Space Coast. He knows how important that rivalry is, obviously. He's played in it. And he was a kid that started on a team that was a decent running team, didn't have the receiving corps that was necessarily as balanced as they would like. It developed a little later in the year, but They couldn't pass protect great. Richie's probably going to end up being one of the starting guards if I was to guess. Now, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. You could say Jones could be a starter. Maybe it's Ferguson. Those things will take care of themselves. But again, this is kind of like Roydell at running back. O-line is a spot that Florida State had some depth last year by label. I was more down on Florida State's O-line than some because it just ticked me off that they didn't play well. Early in the Florida game, they were bad. They were real bad. And they were real bad pretty much most of the game against Clemson when it came to running the football. They just couldn't do it. Leonard will help you with that. He's 6'2", 6'3", 310 pounds, give or take. I know these kids fluctuate. And he has the ability to root guys out, move them against their will. Now, that doesn't mean he is justifiable as a starter. There's all kinds of things. Does he learn the playbook? Does he understand the nuances of all the checks? That's the stuff you got to go through spring ball with. O-line is about 5 guys working together, combining their skill sets, and doing the best they can on each play like it's their last. It's hard. Really freaking hard. I don't know if he's ready for that, but I think that, Atkinson and everybody, they have at least the pieces. Last year, the chemistry didn't work out, and then they had injuries on top of it, excuse me. That's hard. Having Mo back at center certainly helps. I think he's a really good football player. I just love his effort. But at the same time, they need to take a step up. And I'll call it out every time, before and after games if it doesn't. Big games like the first, say 2 or 3 games, we'll probably know of the bigger games, but there are 4 or 5 games every year. If your D-line is doing their job on that side, if your O-line does it too, you win the trenches on both sides, you're going to win. I think the Florida State D-line is going to be a little better than people think. I'll get to that here in a second. But this is a key cog. If Richie at least pushes 4 starter reps and can play, be the first guy off the bench, or he is the starter, that's a good sign in my eyes. Again, just like with Roydell Williams, experience. He's played in the SEC. He's been a guy in rivalry games, like the Florida State game. It matters where he's been. He's not going to be surprised by anything at Florida State. Now, the culture is going to be better. I'm going to go out on a limb on that one. So that's only going to elevate this young man's game. All of those things together, I think he has an excellent shot to start. He'll have to earn it. But if I had to go one way or the other, flip the coin, I'm going, yes, he ends up starting at some point this year, maybe from game 1. I don't know. But that's just my opinion. Next up is Marvin Jones Jr. And this is the one a lot of people are probably most fascinated about, and I get it. There are only so many guys that come from the heritage like that. His dad was beyond a dude. Marvin was as good a linebacker as ever walked on the planet physically. He was, from Miami, recruited by every school in the country, arguably the #1 recruit in the country, all that kind of stuff. His son is an elite recruit, goes to Georgia, doesn't work out. Didn't have a ton of great stats, to be honest with you, but I've seen him play live. I've walked by him. I've shook the kid's hand when he was in high school. He's a dude, played at American Heritage. And, he had 16 tackles and 2 sacks during his Georgia career for a couple of years. That's combined. Is he ready for the Florida State deal? I don't know, but I would imagine so. He seemed like he was ready based on press conference, etc. I think he's going to do pretty well. I'm not saying it's going to be gangbusters from play 1, but if they can get somebody, and I'm not sure how they're going to do this. This is the other part with the starting. Are they going to rotate him with Patrick? Or are they going to play 2 DNs that are similar in terms of their frames and size? I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do that. And that'll make spring ball interesting. I would think that they can find different ways to go about it. And it may be a deal where Florida State, and this has become the norm because so many offenses switch it up, they might change a little bit who they start, assuming everybody's healthy, based on who they play. Marvin might be better against a team like at the end of the year, Florida, than he would somebody else. Those things kind of take care of themselves. But if he doesn't start, maybe it's Sion. I want to probably totally butcher this. Woahia, the kid transferred in with DJ from Oregon State. He's really good too. I just brought up Marvin because I think it's an important part that you have guys that are from the program's heritage. Like, again, his dad was a dude, early 90s, first-round pick of the Jets, played in the NFL. That's good to have those guys around the program. And also, it's important to have those guys around just so the family base and everything about getting Florida kids and recruiting are there. It's important for Marvin to be successful as a Nole and eventually get drafted. He has a chance, technically, after this year coming up, to be one and done at Florida State because he's played 2 years at Georgia. Got to be 3 years removed. This is an important year for him. Maybe he rotates with Patrick. Maybe he's the starter at the other end, or maybe there's a combination. I don't know. But he's going to play. You can't teach 6'4", 6'5", 250 and run the way he does. There's got to be a way to get him on the field, even if it's just as a pass rusher and being the third down and long guy. I have no idea. Looking at him physically, I have a hard time seeing how he doesn't start. I just don't know what you do because he's probably a kid a lot of people would say he's more like Patrick in a pure end, a pure pass rusher. Can he strong arm some of these 320-pound right tackles if he plays the strong side end? I don't know about that. That's a different deal. It's technically D-end as well, but the responsibility is completely different depending on who you're playing. So that's a little bit iffy to me, and I wouldn't go gangbusters on this, but at some point I think Marvin's going to start. And that's just the way it is. I like him a lot as an upside player for the Noles, and I think a lot of Florida State fans are interested. So let's hope that he does well. I'd like a lot of people to comment on him. Why or why not you think he will. And again, he had limited reps, 16 tackles and 2 sacks in 2 years up in Athens for UGA. So it wasn't overwhelming, but he is pretty darn talented. Speaking of talented, Gametime. Check out the Gametime app. Here's something that's going on that's pretty interesting. I grew up following basketball, and I am completely fascinated with the NCAA tournament. If you want to check out something and see where your seats are, you could use the Gametime app to get NCAA tickets right up to the last minute, flash deals, etc. You don't always know, and this kind of sucks, especially when I was growing up. You got tickets. You had an idea. You could look at a map online, but it wasn't the same as seeing the seat like on your phone from 2 inches away from your face and being able to literally see the view. They will put the view from the seat on there. That's what I like. Makes it easier. And on that, they'll also refund your difference 110% if you find a ticket cheaper in that same little row from another app. So it's pretty cool. But take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, all Gametime users get $100 off a big game ticket with code VEGAS100. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app. Use VEGAS100, VEGAS 100 for $100 off a big game ticket. And that is Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Lowest price guaranteed. All right. Now, the last 2 players that I want to talk about aren't exactly on the small end of the spectrum either. This is kind of like the SEC South to Florida State trip because Earl Little, another Alabama kid, Sean Murphy, another Alabama kid. So we got all of these SEC kids coming in. I just realized that all of them that I picked were from the SEC. Kind of weird how that worked out. But Earl Little, why is he important? It's 2 reasons. One, you may not think about as much. It's a South Florida kid. You know me, I like recruiting. He's from South Florida. That never hurts. He was an elite recruit. Now he's at Florida State. His old head coach, obviously, is now the DB coach for the Noles. That also helps coach the stand. But at the same time, if you didn't have him there and you got him, it'd still be great. But that's proof the kids want to play with people they know. Surtain is a really good coach. He was at American Heritage, for those of you who didn't know. Now, why do I think he can start? Because if there's been anybody trumpet FSU's ability to be a great defensive secondary this year, if there's anybody more than me, I don't know who it is. I love their secondary group because I think some of the young guys, well, I mean, somebody's got to be second and third team and so on and so forth. I think Florida State's depth, even with some of their freshmen, like just because I've seen them play and I feel confident in them, like KJ Kirkland may be third team. I don't know. Ashwin Barker is a really good player. Maybe he ends up starting. I don't know. There's so many options. It kind of takes care of itself. But let's talk about the corner and the nickel spot. Thomas is a kid I like. Azariah is a really athletic young man, and he has length. Okay, you want him probably playing boundary or against bigger guys, whatever. Florida State plays right and left some, whatever. Ventral Cypress is back. Kind of hard to beat them out. Well, what about the nickel spot? Well, that's where some people think he'll play there. I'm not sure how that's going to work. They could move Ventrell to nickel against certain teams. Again, these depth charts, in my opinion, I don't care what school you pick, are very fluid. And again, it depends on the game. He may not be ready to go against certain teams because they all, as a nickel, Earl's not like humongous or anything. They might use a safety down there because they're constantly running 12 personnel. What does that mean? 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and they constantly put the tight end in the slot because they want to run outside and they want to run screens. How many corners are going to take on a tight end and win that battle? 1%? It depends. The nickel spot is the most difficult to project, even play to play. Forget game, because you don't know who's going to line up there. Can Earl play it? Yes. He's twitchy enough to go against the traditional slot guys. He's not going to beat the bejesus out of a 6'5", 255-pound tight end. I talk about this all the time on this show and others on the Locked On Network because it is a conundrum for defensive coordinators. He is a physical kid. He's been well coached, and he does have experience being with Patrick before, and he's also been coached by Saban. I'll take that every time. It'll work itself out. But I think he can play nickel, or I could think of situations at least he might play outside, and they might move guys around. You could make an argument from these 6 players, hypothetically, that Surtain is the most important. When you have a gazillion DBs that are flexible, your defensive game plan becomes much more diverse, and therefore it makes the other team kind of worry because they don't know what's coming. If you got the same guys in the same spots, you're going up against an experienced quarterback with some flexibility with his positions around him, the slot, the tight end, the H-back, etc. They'll carve you up. You're going to give up 450 plus and 35 plus points. It's going to be a long day. You must have chess pieces like this that is just fighting to get on the field. Yes, there's a really good chance Surtain ends up being a guy that coaches this young man into the NFL, but Little may not even start this year. But you need guys like that battling for it. I have all the confidence in the world in Surtain doing that. But again, they've got to battle. He'll find the role for him, and it'll work itself out. I don't know if it's a guarantee it'll be right away either, because the guys coming back are really good, and they've been in Florida State's system a while, so we'll see. But I like him a lot. Finally, it's Sean Murphy. This is another one I don't have a huge opinion on. Elite recruit, loved his film out of high school. Had an offer from everybody. Barely made a dent at Alabama. 2 years. Didn't do a whole lot. And to be honest with you, is kind of looking at this. Then we pull him back up here. 5 tackles in 2 years. Not exactly devastating by any means. But here's the deal. You can't teach the size and the length. Coaches recruit on one word more than any other. It drives parents nuts, but this is the way it works. This one word, you couldn't say it 100 times and say it enough. Measurables, measurables, measurables. Repeat that until you're blue in the face. Murphy has that. He has the speed. He has the strength. He has the arm length. All those things you look for. If he can play in Nick Saban's diverse and really complex 3-4 defense, it's probably going to be a little easier at almost any other school, if not every other school in college football. I expect him to make an impact at Florida State for 2 reasons. Number one, all the things I just talked about, it's obvious. It's just raw talent. Let's not deny that. That's number one. 2, Florida State's depth chart at linebacker is thin. He could be mediocre, and he's probably going to play some. That's just the reality. Florida State has underachieved in recruiting at linebacker overall directly out of the high school ranks. They just didn't get enough of them. Kids they got were good players. They didn't get enough of them. They just lost too many battles. Having DJ Lundy back is great. Maybe they put Murphy there with him. Could be. I'm not sure. But maybe they use him on the edge. They do some different things. Maybe Florida State runs from 3-4 defense in situations, or 3-3-5 stack, whatever they want to call it. These names don't mean much to me. A stand-up outside linebacker with a true defensive end next to him over the tackle. So he's outside. There could be plays like that. He's an athlete. This is up to all the people at Florida State, not just the defense, like everybody. Kid like Murphy, it's got to work. Way too talented. He cannot be on the field just on special teams, kind of goof around. He's way too talented. If they do not maximize him, that's on Florida State staff. I'm just going to say it right now. This kid is a freaky athlete. You have to find a way, especially at a spot. Again, you're very thin. He has to work out. Now, the injury bug is the one thing you can take off that. If he's hurt, he's hurt. Everything else, I know it's not fair, but too bad you guys get paid millions of dollars. It has to work with this kid. Too good. So with that, again, please comment on these kids. There's other transfers you want to comment on, that's fine. I limited it to 6 because I knew I would expand in this show. I try to keep it under 30 minutes and kind of go that route. So again, Roydell Williams, Richie Leonard, Malik Benson, Marvin Jones Jr., Earl Little Jr., and Sean Murphy. Those are the 6 I talked about. And what's a really good Florida State transfer portal class again? And a note, April 16th, that window opens again, and it runs to the 30th of April. Florida State and every other college will be able to pick up more transfers if they desire. And kids can leave too. You're always looking is kind of the thing that coaches have told me, and it makes sense now because the transfer portal is what it is. It's a disaster, but if you don't work with it, you lose. Florida State's done a great job. I think these 6 guys will be part of. There's 2 or 3 others. Again, Wahia, the kid at DN, might start. Maybe it's him instead of Marvin Jones. It's a great problem to have. Ventrell Cypress, maybe he beats out Earl Little Jr. I don't know. It'll take care of itself. Bottom line, Florida State's got a lot of guys that are going to compete from starting roles, and it's great. If you're going to bring in guys, they need to be somebody that can do something right away. I think Florida State did a tremendous job, again, so far, and there's more time to even add more. So please hit the like button, subscribe, and share this podcast. I truly appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you very much.